Good morning, everybody. Part of having a better life is developing insight and self-awareness. Clearly, I just woke up, hence the jammies. So forgive me if I'm a little scattered. But we need to be self-aware. And for our overall health, we need to be bodily aware. We're often seeking outside ourselves, not just for happiness, but for everything. We become WebMD and Google Docs doctors. We feel a discomfort and we guess what that might be. We might Google what that might be, and that might end up making us more anxious and unnerved. There is such a thing as being too bodily aware. Many people are completely detached from their body. They don't even think about it. It's just a tool they use to grab things and move things and get from place A to place B, and they disregard it and don't take it into consideration about what they eat and what they do in a day, how it's going to affect their body, how their body's feeling from day to day. But it is possible to be on the complete other side of the spectrum and be way too aware of your body. If you are prone to panic attacks, if you have been the victim of a trauma, emotional trauma in your past, an assault of any kind, or experienced a great bodily injury, such as due to war or a car accident or multiple surgeries, you may be hypervigilant, unconsciously hypervigilant. Your body has taken such a blow, and there are neurons all through our body. Our autonomic nervous system travels the length of our body and goes into our brain and sends it messages. And when your body receives a shock or injury to itself, too profound for your self, your mind to handle, your body holds the memory in the autonomic nervous system, and your brain kind of blocks you off from it. It's stored in your unconscious memory, and you may be unable to access the entire event, certain parts of the event, or when you access it consciously, you may be completely emotionally removed from the event. You may be able to talk about the most horrific things without evoking any kind of emotional response, and that is because it is trapped in your unconscious. All the emotions, everything that is tied to it is in your unconscious mind, your body, and your autonomic nervous system. And what happens when this happens is it gets stored in your body, such as when you get nervous and you get an upset tummy and butterflies in your stomach. You may get sweaty palms and feel your skin crawl or your hair stand up, or feel a little dizzy when you're extremely nervous going up on stage to give a speech, etc. Things come out in our body. The problem is when you have experienced a great trauma of some kind, the body doesn't have words to explain, to process. It only stores the experiential pain. There are no words. There's only the experience. And if you were too young when traumas happened to you to have the emotional capacity and worldly knowledge to describe the experience, you don't have words to process the experience. Same problem, so it gets stored in your body and your unconscious. And when we have a trigger, like if you were attacked by a dog, and you see a dog, and now suddenly your whole body is overcome with these unpleasant sensations of terror. You may not consciously feel afraid, but all the feelings that go with terror, your stomach goes up into your throat, and your pupils dilate, and you get goosebumps, and your heart starts to race, and you feel nauseated, and all the rest. Things that may be hard to put into words because, again, there are no words for experiences. You can't describe what orange juice tastes like, the actual experience of it, to someone who's never tasted it, because it's a physical experience. It's not an emotional experience. It is physiological. And so these triggers can be innocuous. Something as simple as a smell, a similar emotion, a similar time of day, a similar location, a similar looking person, things that you don't even recognize as obviously as I was attacked by a dog. Now every time I see a dog, my whole body goes wacko. It may be very innocuous and very unobvious where these sensations are coming from. And this can lead you to panic attacks, or conversion or somatization disorders, or any number of physiologic arousal symptoms when your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight nervous system, kicks in due to a trigger reminiscent of the previous injury. There's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic is, I think sympathetic is fight or flight, parasympathetic is rest and digest. And when you're in the fight or flight nervous system, everything is activated. By activated, I mean that your fight or flight nervous system is on and is on a hyper alert. You're physiologically aroused. Now, arousal means active. Physiologic means having to do with the body. So, because the trigger can be innocuous, you can be completely oblivious to the connection that leaves you not knowing when or where to expect these extreme physical sensations to happen. And not being able to connect the dots of, I'm having this physical response because of this, and this reminds me of this. So all you are left with is going about your day to day, normal living, and then your body goes bizarro in a way that is extremely hard to describe, with any number of symptoms that are extremely uncomfortable, even terrifying. They're real physical symptoms of an overly activated autonomic nervous system. If you take your nervous system and you were to look at it just by itself, it looks like a wiry silhouette of the human body. It runs the entire course of your body. So these symptoms can be anywhere, in any organ, in any system: numbness, tingling, paralysis, nausea, sweating, dizziness, palpitations. The list could go on and on about sensations that you might experience. And you otherwise would just be chilling with your family watching television, and then bam, or you're at your job, and then bam. Some people who experience physiological arousal to the extreme can begin to associate it with where they were when they were physiologically aroused. Excuse me. Such as in the elevator, or on a bridge, or on the highway, and then they begin to avoid what they assume is the trigger, and it's not even the trigger. And the avoidance gets bigger and bigger and bigger because they have these bizarre physical experiences in more and more and more places, because they don't have the correct trigger identified, or the memory association, or the realization that this is not due to the elevator or the bridge. This is due to the car accident they had 5 years ago. And they haven't made that connection. They can close off their life more and more and more. They can be afraid of the physical sensations, and it can become full-on panic attacks, and they can reduce their life smaller and smaller and smaller, to becoming agoraphobic. Even if you don't have full-on panic attacks, you can be too aware of your body. It's hard not to be when you stub your toe, not to be totally aware of how much a toe hurts. When we experience pain, all of our attention goes directly to where we hurt. And when there's something going on, pain in our body, it's really hard to focus elsewhere outside of our body, to the rest of our life, to anything, to our thoughts, to think. It just, the sensation just draws our attention. Same thing happens when you're physiologically aroused, is that there's so much stimulation going on internally and with your person, with your body, that it's really hard to not focus on it, to not zero in on it. And if you focus on these sensations, you may not misallocate the where, when, and why, and start avoiding things, but you might intensify the sensation because of focusing on it. And besides intensifying the sensation because of focusing on it, just making it worse for yourself, not knowing why or what is happening. That's why when people have their first panic attack, they often run to the emergency room, thinking they're having a heart attack, because these are real physical symptoms, and they don't know where they're coming from. How would you know the difference unless you were diagnosed that it was a panic attack? It is that real. It is in your physical body. So you can become quite afraid of what's happening to you, and start Google docking and trying to figure out what's wrong with you, and then think that you have some sort of disease, and then get yourself even more anxious. Now you're anxious. You weren't anxious before. You were experiencing detached bodily sensations that were hidden in your subconscious. So you were not aware that there should be anything coming up, which is why you feel like it's purely bodily and has no relation to any trauma or anything you've experienced, because you're severed from that. So it's just coming out in your body. But because it's just coming out in your body, like pancreatitis or anything else would, you start Googling and then you work yourself completely into a frenzy of anxiety. Now you're anxious, and the anxiety ups the ante of your already aroused, overly aroused physiology. You can be too self-aware of your body. Once you start to experience symptoms like this, bodily symptoms, you become hypervigilant, excessively attentive to any sign or signal that this might be coming up. This might be starting again, whatever your symptoms are. And so every little ache, every little twitch, every little flip-flop of your heart or your stomach, every normal thing that happens in there, every time you get goosebumps, every little odd quirk that our body does, sends you into these episodes because you are hyper-focused out of the apprehension, because these episodes are so disquieting and physically uncomfortable and physically disorienting. They're mentally disorienting. Like when I said you stub your toe, all you can notice is your toe. If you're having extreme stomach ache and nausea, it's really hard to focus on the outside world. These sensations are very uncomfortable, gross, confusing, and disorienting to your mind, and disruptive to your life. And so you become apprehensive about having other episodes happen, and your apprehension causes you to be hypervigilant or hyper-focused, hyper-attentive, very aware, constantly, chronically scanning your body for every little twitch and sensation. And this actually can itself, this hypervigilance, this hyper-awareness, this hyper-focus on all of your physiological bodily sensations, can trigger more episodes of your symptoms to happen, because you are hyper alert. You've got yourself worked up. And because this is caused by an overactive autonomic nervous system, the fight or flight response, the physiological fight or flight response, because there's a body-mind feedback loop. Anything that's going to stress you out is going to tip that scale ever closer to having another episode happen. You want to calm your nervous system. I suffer from this problem. I have a trauma history. I have physical illnesses. Having an actual legitimate chronic physical illness can make you extra attentive to your body, because the physical sensations of your body can themselves be very distracting and disruptive and hard to ignore. The pain and etc. that is going on with your physical illness, it's hard not to focus on it. And again, it makes you disrupted, frustrated, raises that anxiety level and irritation level, and puts you closer to the fight or flight response, triggering episodes. Because I suffer from this myself, I have tried numerous ways to manage this issue. I don't know why I haven't yet brought it up, probably because I have yet to find a solution There are suggested solutions. I haven't yet found one that works consistently, but that doesn't mean they won't work consistently for you, or at least some of the time to help reduce the symptoms. First things first is to recognize that this is not, I mean, if you have an unusual medical symptom, get yourself checked out clearly. Make sure there's nothing actually happening to you medically. Once you're in the medical clear and you know that this is just a bodily nervous system reaction, your physiology gone amok, is to reassure yourself when these things are happening, whatever they may be, stroke-like symptoms, paralysis, throwing up, any number of things can happen to you. When these things start happening, don't get more anxious about what's happening to you. Calm yourself, self-talk, calm yourself about what is happening. Reassure yourself that this is just a physiologic response to a trigger. Something has triggered my autonomic nervous system to respond to a memory. And I'm re-experiencing physiologically an overactive autonomic nervous system. This is not going to kill me. This is not going to get worse. I've been here before. I can do this. I've done it again. It will pass. It sucks, but it will pass. That it's not life-threatening. Do your best to calm yourself, to recognize what it is. That it's just physiology, it's just bodily responses, to minimize, not catastrophize, to remind yourself that you've been here before and you have surpassed this. You know what it is, not to add worry and anxiety and up the ante on top of what you're already having to deal with. Anything that can calm your central nervous system is going to help calm your bodily systems. Suggested is meditation. For me personally, meditation does not work because I am so overcome with the sensations. The plethora of sensations are so just overpowering, like a migraine headache. You can't focus on anything. To sit and meditate would cause me to just be so incredibly, it would up the ante of me being aware of my physiological experience, my bodily experience, all the more. But for some people, meditation can bring down their autonomic nervous system. So meditation might work for you. It might cause you to be more aware of every little twitch and tingle and flip-flop and pitter-patter and everything that's going on with you if you're sitting quiet and meditate. So meditation may make it worse, it may make it better. If meditation tends to make it worse, distraction might make it better. Anything you can focus your mind into, immerse your mind, blare some music and get dancing. It burns off some of that anxious energy anyway and gives a release of that fight or flight response through the adrenaline released from movement, and distracts your mind so that you are not focusing on your body. Anything to really suck your mind in through distraction, to not pay attention. You hurt somewhere. You got a Charlie horse, and then something really cool is going on. You get into a deep conversation with your friend and you totally forget you had a Charlie horse, and then next thing you know, it's gone. It's not going to be that smooth or that easy, but the less you can focus on your body and the more you can focus out here in the world, the better. So something to immerse your mind into that really sucks you in. As I mentioned with the dance and the moving, exercise, some type of vigorous exercise. You might feel like it's an awkward time to exercise because your body feels like you just got off the tilt-a-whirl and the gravitron and spent a long day at the circus and you're spinning and dizzy. But that is the fight or flight response. It is, you're surging with cortisol and adrenaline, and that is the fight or flight, runaway response. And so vigorous exercise, if you are capable of it, going and taking a brisk walk out in nature, because nature is calming, doing some boxing, any sort of vigorous exercise can help bring down that extreme reserve of stress hormone and can ease the bodily symptoms. Progressive muscle relaxation, breathing techniques. I will list below to body-mind feedback loop video about somatization and conversion disorders and the body-mind feedback loop and how that all works. The closest that I've done to a video about the autonomic nervous system. I will link below to video from about progressive muscle relaxation, sensory box, breathing techniques, relaxation techniques, and those are my suggestions for dealing with this sort of a condition. Try not to be too afraid of it, focused on it, as not to exacerbate it. Try not to associate it, misallocate it to people, places, things, and situations that it has nothing to do with, so that your life begins to shrink as you avoid things, trying to avoid being triggered. Try meditation or distraction, whichever one works best for you. Try breathing techniques, progressive muscle relaxation, and other ways of calming the autonomic nervous system down, or bursts of energy to work out those stress hormones faster, releasing them from your body. And if this continues to be a problem, so much so that it is disruptive to your life, seek professional help. Seek professional help to prevent these things getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more frequent and more often, and interfering every day with your daily life and ability to participate in your life. And therapy can help you potentially connect the dots and figure out where this started, why this started, what it is that is triggering these situations. Now, everyone, if they experience extreme stress, they're just overwhelmed and burnt out, can have a thing or two happen. But if it is a continual part of your life, you may be suffering from one of these sensorial, physiological, bodily conditions. If it is to such a degree and frequency that it's interfering with your ability to function in your life, seek professional help, and they will help you to navigate through and try to figure out what exactly is going on with you, how to manage it, connect the dots to where it started, so that you can begin to identify triggers, real triggers, what's really associated with this memory. And things like EMDR work through the original trauma to process it. Eye movement desensitization, reintegration, EMDR therapy, to process those by watching a blinking light go back and forth while you relive the event verbally. It makes a connection to your unconscious mind, because when we walk forward, we're scanning back and forth. So it combines the body, the mind, conscious mind, and the unconscious mind back to that event that originally caused these sensations to be happening for you. And you can process through that you originally had no means to process. It was either too much for you to process, or you were too young to have the emotional and cognitive capacities to process. EMDR and therapies like that can help you process this to get past that recurrent loop. It is a loop, like PTSD of re-experiencing is a loop of re-experiencing. You are biologically, physiologically re-experiencing something, and therapy can help you identify exactly what bodily disorder you have, how to best manage it, new and different stress management and physiological management solutions that I am not aware of or listing here, and potentially connect the dots and process the original trauma, original triggering event or situation, so that you completely can recover from these experiences. They will teach you and train you how to better move through these situations as they happen. Sit with it and not react to it, and eventually they will become less and less and less and less and less. So, although many of us are detached from our body, we don't even think of it. It's like a skin suit we wear so our mind can go do things we want to do. We don't think about our body very much. Some of us have no choice but to have it on our minds all the time. So hopefully the links below provide you some tools to try to calm yourself and when it is occurring. Try not to focus on your body. Try to begin to get out of the hyper awareness of your body as much as you can. Don't be at the edge of your seat waiting for these things to happen all the time. Spend more time out here as much as you can, and just ignoring as much as you can of the little things that our body does. Try not to be so connected to your body, and pursue therapy if necessary,